intimidated. Oh my god, I can't talk today. I am intimidated. Hello my loves, and thank you for joining me. It's Kirsten, and today we're doing the Reading Around the World challenge. So this is a challenge where you're trying to read from an author from different countries. I mean, it's in the name. Really. I was inspired to start looking at how many books I've read from around the world because of Emmy and Bella. I will have both their channels linked below, and I think also Christina tries to make an effort to do this one as well, so I'll have her channel linked below. But what I'm going to do is go through the different books that I have read from around the world, a couple that I've got on my TBR that I want to read, and then hopefully you'll all give me some ideas of different books from different countries that I can look into reading. That's the idea for all of this. So hopefully you enjoy it all. Let's just get straight into this. I am going to be talking about multiple books from different places. I won't be talking about England and America because let's face it, I live in England, so it's very easy for me to get hold of books from English authors and American authors. But then from different countries, if I've had more than one recently that I've read and enjoyed, then I will be talking about all of those. Okay, I'm going to start off with Japan. I would love books from Japan. However, the books I have read from Japan, I've actually ended up unhauling. So I've read quite a few. So I've read Lonely Castle in the Mirror, The Tale of Genji, and Solo Dance. Tale of Genji is a classic book. It was the first classic book written by a woman, I think it was. But all of them, like, I liked, but I haven't really felt that connection to keeping. The only books that I end up reading which are all translated from Japanese is manga. It seems to be only manga that I really connect to, and yet so many people love Japanese books. I just haven't found any that I really connect to. So if you have any that you've really enjoyed, please put those in the comments below for me because I would love to enjoy more of it. I like it, but I can never connect fully, which is a shame. We then have Hans Christian Andersen. So Hans Christian Andersen is an author of different fairy tales, and he's a Danish author. And I am slowly reading my way through this beautiful collection. I love this collection. So stunning. I read The Little Mermaid from here. I want to read other stories as well, and definitely reading fairy tales and folklore books is something that I want to focus on this year, although I have taken a couple of months break from doing that, but this is definitely one that I would love to get into. So that is for Danish. For Ukraine we have Vita Nostra, and this is by Marina and Sergei Dyshenko. I've mentioned this book a lot lately. There is a second book coming out, I think it's actually already out, which is Assassin of Reality, and this is a dark academia weird book, and I loved this. So this is actually translated from Russian, but the authors are Ukrainian. It was so fantastic. We're following this main character who gets approached by this person from an exclusive school, and she has to do these series of tasks, and by completing these tasks she then coughs up these gold coins, and after you get a certain amount of gold coins she then goes to this school, and it's so bizarre, but I really enjoyed it. So yeah, this was definitely a book I would recommend if you liked Bunny and you like that feeling of not really knowing what's going on. But yeah, that was a really good book. So that's for Ukraine. And then we have Russia, and I've actually only read 2 authors from Russia. Oh no, 3 authors. One I unhauled, which was Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I just couldn't get on with that book, unfortunately. We then have Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. This was written in English, but Vladimir Nabokov is a Russian author. This I actually struggled to get through. I do want to reread it eventually because it is such a great piece of work for looking at critically. Like, the writing techniques in this is amazing, but the subject matter is not that good. However, my favourite Russian author is actually Leo Tolstoy, so I've read Anna Karenina. I want to be reading War and Peace this year. This was a chunky tome to get through, and he has a habit of repeating himself, but Leo Tolstoy also has this beautiful way of capturing everyday life in this beautiful melancholic way. I actually want to reread Anna Karenina now that I have an idea of what his writing is like. I think I can go into it expecting the different things, expecting the repetitions, expecting some of the slower parts, but understanding what he's trying to communicate with each of these parts. But instead I've decided to go War and Peace first. But yeah, I have to admit, Leo Tolstoy is probably my favourite. Out of the 3 Russian authors that I've read, Leo Tolstoy is definitely my favourite. We then get into Canada. Bunny by Mona Allwood. Mona Howard Canadian, and this is another weird dark academia book. We're following our main character who is jealous of this group of girls that have this really tight-knit friendship. They call each other bunnies. She then gets sucked into it and things get really weird. It has you questioning reality, questioning things that are going on. I do want to do a reread and actually annotate this. This is something that I can pull loads and loads of things from. I have read it once already. I buddy read this with a friend and I would love to re-go over and re-annotate now that I know what's going on. And I started to a little bit, but I know this is a book that's going to take me a little while to read to do this, and I have lots of video plans at the minute, so I haven't made much progress with this. It's going to go on the back burner probably till next year, just because of the amount of plans that I've got for the latter half of this year. But this was fantastic, I really enjoyed it. And then we also have Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. Again, she's Canadian. Loved this book. This is my new favourite book of 2023. It's going to be in my top books of the year, 100%. I have not stopped talking about this one since I read it in January. It is fantastic and beautiful and I loved it. And this is like a light academia. We're following Emily Wilde as she's going about creating this encyclopedia of fairies. We have a bit of a rivals to lovers moment. We have the fairies that are going on. It's just so beautiful, and we have the second book coming out in January as well, so you can guarantee I'll be getting that. But this is just so good. So there are a few Canadian authors that I have really enjoyed. For Poland we have The Witcher by Andrzej Sapkowski. Sorry, I'm really bad with pronunciation names. Even when I've looked it up, I still cannot pronounce them. It's bad. But this is The Last Wish. This is a series of short stories that is a prequel before the Witcher series. I really want to get the second set. I really want it in this illustrated edition, but I haven't seen it in a while. So if I see it, I'm going to go and buy it because I at least want the 2 sets of short stories in this. And then I think the actual books, the rest of it, aren't illustrated. So I'll probably just collect those in paperback, but the short story collections are illustrated. And they are just such gorgeous illustrations. I mean, that is gorgeous. That is amazing. So yeah, I really need to get the second collection of these. And this is kind of based on fairy tales again. I could definitely have connections to Cinderella, Rapunzel, all of these different fairy tales that we've grown up with, but just seeing his twist on it, and it was great. Absolutely loved this. Would highly recommend, actually. I mean, to be fair, I would recommend the majority of all of these books. So moving on to France. I've actually read a lot of books from French authors. I've really enjoyed them. One that I don't see enough people talking about is The Mad Woman's Ball by Victoria Mars. This was fantastic. This is looking at an actual French institute that was around in 1885. There was an actual asylum, and this author looks at that asylum, looks at how women are treated, and you're seeing it from different perspectives. You're seeing it from a young girl who gets put in the asylum because she's not adhering to the way her father wants her to be. You see it from a worker who profoundly believes in everything that they're doing to these women to try and make them better. You then have somebody that's already an inmate, and then you have someone that is an inmate but thinks it's better than being out there in the world with men and their grabbing hands. It's really interesting to get such a wide view. It's only a short book, but it's so well done. It's absolutely amazing. I would highly recommend this one. So fantastic to look at how women were treated and how asylums were mistreated, that they were used to put women in there that were just being a nuisance, that they wanted to have a mistress, they didn't want to have to deal with their wife anymore and things like this. And some people did go in there because they actually needed it, but the way the doctors and the nurses treated them, they weren't ever helping. They were just used as a spectacle, and it's just heartbreaking but profound. It was an amazing book. We then have Victor Hugo's Notre Dame de Paris. This was amazing. This is what the Disney film The Hunchback of Notre Dame is based on. I really enjoyed this. There are 3 chapters in here that was taken out originally when it was first published because it's not really relating to the story at all, but they were my 3 favourite chapters, and they are about the architecture of Paris, and it was beautiful. I loved it. I loved exploring how Victor Hugo believes that architecture was a way for us to express art and individualism, and how his terror was that as we progress through the modern ages, we're going to lose that and everything's going to become these grey square blocks. There's going to be no individuality. And it's scary because it's true, because that's exactly what's happened. And I know it's probably not for everyone, like it's not got anything to do with the actual storyline, which by the way is way darker than the Disney film, but I would assume that you would know that already because they definitely added some sparkles and stuff to every story that they changed. But yeah, it was just beautiful to see that and to really have his call to people to be like, don't lose this individuality for architecture. It's going to be a sad moment when we do, and it was just so profound. I loved it. It was so beautiful, and this was really easy to read. I really enjoyed it. I loved the storyline to it. I loved all the characters involved. It was really good. Really enjoyed that. I do want to tackle Les Miserables, but I'm intimidated. Intimidated? Oh my god, I can't talk today. I am intimidated. That book is huge, so I'm a little bit intimidated, but I think once I've tackled War and Peace, there are a couple of big classics that I would love to get to, like The Count of Monte Cristo and Les Miserables. Again, put in the comments below which one you think I should prioritise out of those two, because that is the one I will tackle after War and Peace. But yeah, really enjoyed Notre Dame de Paris. And another French author that I've enjoyed is Gaston Leroux. I've actually read 2 of their works, but I'm showing up The Phantom of the Opera. That's what they're most well known for. They also did a locked room mystery, which is the mystery of the Yellow Room, which inspired Agatha Christie. I loved reading that just to see all the inspirations. And this one is Phantom of the Opera. It is huge. There's been film adaptations. It's been in theatre for years and years and years. This is like a darker gothic mystery of this phantom that haunts the theatre. It's really well done, really beautiful. I have to actually admit, out of the 2, I preferred the mystery of the Yellow Room, which was surprising, but I can definitely see why so many people love this. I just think I would love to see it in theatre. I think it would translate for me better on theatre. Okay, then we have a couple of German books. We have Perfume by Patrick Susskind. This is a most disturbing read. It is a very disturbing book. We're following this guy that has this amazing sense of smell. It's almost like a superpower amazing. However, he then wants to find and replicate the most beautiful smell he's ever smelled. The problem is that is dead virgins, so you can see where it's going from there. It's a twisty book. It gets dark and weird. It was definitely a time. I also kind of liked it as well. Like, it was done so well just to be in the mind of this person and see how disconnected with reality he becomes. It's so unusual, and it does get a little bit weird and chaotic at the end, but it was done pretty well. Another book I think is extremely underrated is Cassandra by Krista Wolf. It's someone looking at the mythology of Cassandra, and Cassandra is Paris's sister. So the whole Battle of Troy was around Paris and Helen. Depending on what tale you read will depend on whether Helen went willingly or not, but regardless, Helen ends up going to Troy. And Paris's sister, Cassandra, has visions. She was gifted visions by Apollo and then cursed by him as well, that nobody would ever believe her visions, and so she sees what is going to happen, how Troy is going to fall, the whole awful things that happen because of it all, but nobody believes her, and this is her tale. It's done as a stream of consciousness. There's no chapter break, and it doesn't follow any particular timeline. You're just in Cassandra's head as she is travelling back with Agamemnon, and she is thinking about things from the past, but it can be from when she was a child to more recently with the Battle of Troy. It's very all over the place, but it's so well done, and probably my favourite rendition of Cassandra that I've read. It was fantastic, and I definitely want to get more of Krista Wolf's books. They're just actually quite hard to get hold of. Really enjoyed this one. Okay, moving on to Ireland. We have a few. One of the authors, which is a bit more well known I suppose, is Sally Rooney. I've read 2 of their books. I've read Normal People and Conversations with Friends. Normal People is the one that I connected to the most. Conversations with Friends I ended up giving away to a charity shop. I liked it, but I am the sort of person that a contemporary book really has to connect to me for me to keep hold of it, and that's what Normal People did. I connected to this book so much. I loved it. Sally Rooney got massive for a little while, but this really was a beautiful book set in Ireland as well, which was really nice because I've actually been to Dublin, and to see places that Sally Rooney was talking about in her book was great. I loved all of this, so yeah, enjoyed that. Another Irish author is Sheridan Le Fanu. He wrote Camilla also wrote other books as well, but Camilla's the one that I've read, and this is a vampire book that came before Dracula, why Camilla is referenced as the Queen of Vampires. Loved this book. It was really good. It's really fascinating. It's only short, but it was decadent and gothic. It has sapphic romance going on in here. It's really amazing. I loved this book. If you like vampire stories and you're trying to get into the classic, I would say start with Camilla over Bram Stoker's Dracula. I think this is a lot more readable. Then we also have Oscar Wilde, obviously holding up the picture of Dorian Gray. It's the only book of his that I've read, but I have lots of his collections. I have some of his plays, I have some of his fairy tales that he's written. Love the picture of Dorian Gray so much. It's probably one of my favourite classics. I loved it. I recently reread it. Well, I say recently, I reread it in October and fell in love with it all over again. It was perfect and beautiful and I loved it so much. This is following a man that falls in love with his own beauty. He gets put under the wing of somebody that is very manipulative and likes to do things just to see the chaos that's going to come about, and then it gets very dark. And this is incredibly gay, especially if you read the uncensored version of A Picture of Dorian Gray, because this was censored. This edition is censored. The uncensored version is harder to come by. Highly worth a read though. I think that is fantastic. And then from Wales we have Arthur Machen, and this is The Great Godpan. This is a collection of his short stories. He is a horror writer, or I should say was a horror writer that actually influenced Stephen King. Fantastic. Loved these books so much. I loved the short stories in it. I actually do think The Great Godpan was my favourite, but I loved his way of doing atmosphere, having that darker gothic elements all tied in, keeping the suspense going. Fantastic. Really enjoyed this. Would love to read more of Arthur Machen's work. It really was fantastic. Like, I always say that I don't really read horror books, and I don't tend to read present day horror, although that is changing. In June we read a lot of horror books, so I think it's more for modern day horror. It's like I don't enjoy the slasher and things like that. I don't enjoy the violence for sake of violence, but classic horror is a really good indicator of the sort of horror that I like, because it's just so well done. But yeah, this was fantastic. Okay, then for Italian, well technically Latin, we have Ovid's Metamorphoses. To be honest, I'm only halfway through this book. This is the Latin version of Greek myths, really. It's the Roman myths. Roman and Greek myths were pretty much the same, they just changed the names, which was very interesting. But yeah, that's that one, which is obviously classic mythology. Then for Greek we have Homer, the Iliad. I do also want to read the Odyssey eventually. This took me a couple months to get through. I'm really proud that I actually got through this. The classic mythology ones, they are done in epic poetry format. Poetry is a format that I genuinely do struggle with. Getting through these was a good thing, and I really enjoyed seeing the original, what that's inspired so many mythology retellings, because definitely last year I had a deep dive into Greek mythology retellings. It was lovely to see the original that came from all of that. It was really lovely. Bit difficult to read. I really have to be in the mood to read epic poetry, but I'm very pleased that I did do it. Okay, and then the last one that I've read is actually Finnish, and that's Rabbitback Literature Society. This is by Pasi Ilimaj. I'm sorry. I know I'm going to butcher this, but this was an amazing book. Again, it's kind of on that weird dark academia, same as sort of like Vita Nostra and Bunny. Really, really good. Really enjoyed this. This is like a more of a wintry setting, as you can tell from the book cover, and we're following our main character who gets accepted into the Rabbitback Literature Society. That is this elite literature society, and things get really weird. She realises that there's this game that you play and it's really dark and twisty, and I really enjoyed this one. But it is, again, a bit like Vita Nostra. It's left up to you to decide what happens. I do believe there's a lot more like Finnish folklore elements to this, so I think if I read more Finnish folklore I would have a bit more of an understanding to this book. I was picking up on certain things that made me think, oh, is that actually more like folklore inspired? And the ending of this is very open-ended. It's left up to you what you want to make of this book, which I really enjoyed. But yeah, I had a really good time with this one. Would highly recommend. And also, if you've got know of like any Finnish folklore collections, then put those in the comments below as well. I would love to read some of those. Editing person jumping in here to say I forgot to mention Scotland, which is terrible. I'm part Scottish and I totally forgot to mention Scotland. I had all the books ready to be mentioned. I mean, to be fair, it's only 2 authors, but yeah, let's add that in. So we have 2 authors from Scotland. First of all, we have got Robert Louis Stevenson, the author of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, as well as a bunch of other short stories. This is a short story collection that I've got, and I've actually read quite a few of them, to be honest. Let me see. So I have read The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which is a great gothic literature story, one that we all know pretty well because due to media we've actually still continued our love affair with that story. That one kind of looks at morality and the base instincts compared to the more thoughtful side of our nature. Is an interesting one. I've also read The Body Snatcher and The Bottle Imp, so I've got 2 more short stories to go from this collection, and they're just really good gothic literature stories. So of course had to mention him, as well as none other than Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. So you'll probably know him more from the Sherlock Holmes series. I've read all of the Sherlock Holmes books and absolutely love them. One of my favourite authors, hands down. You can see how much Sir Arthur Conan Doyle did for the murder mystery genre. It was fantastic, and Sherlock Holmes continues to be a household name to this day. And then another one of his lesser known works but is more adventure side of things is The Lost World, which actually helped influence things like Jurassic Park, which is amazing. So both really big figures in the literature genre, and of course had to quickly put them in. Also, we're going to be moving on to the books that I have to read on my shelves from around the world, and one that I added in more recently is actually an Icelandic author, which I'm very excited to get to, and this is Swanfolk by Kristin Ormarsdottir. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. And this one's been translated by Vala Thords, and this sounds so good. This is a weird book, and I love weird books. I don't know if you've noticed it, but I love weird books. And this one is set in the not too distant future. A young spy named Elizabeth Ever is about to discover something that will upend her life. Elizabeth likes to take long solitary walks near the lake. One day she sees 2 creatures emerging from the water, half human, half swan. She follows them through tangles of thickets into a strange new reality. It sounds so good. I'm so excited to get to this one. I am actually hoping to get to it in September because I'm going to Iceland, so this is going to be the book that I take with me for that trip, and I'm so excited to read this one. So yes, Icelandic author will be getting ticked off the list soon, but now let's get back into the rest of the books that I have to read from around the world. Okay, so that's kind of around the world of where I have read, again excluding England and America, which is the bulk of my book. But yeah, I've made more of an effort at the end of last year to read more translated works, which definitely helped with this, but it's definitely something I want to be just more aware of, like I'm more aware of the authors, who they are, where they're from. It's important to know anyway. We have a few that I want to get to. So for Italy, I would like, instead of just having a Greek myth that's actually more Latin than it, I would like to pick up an Italian classic, and this is by Umberto Eco. This is The Name of the Rose, and this is a medieval murder mystery with cults involved classic. It sounds so good. It sounds like a lot of different things that I'm gonna like, which I've said every single time I've spoken about this one. It was in a recent book haul video, so yes, I have spoken about it, but we're actually saying that it was a few weeks ago by the time this comes out. Definitely a book I've been interested in reading, and I found out about it because of the different around the world videos, and also Leonie, she also did one of these videos as well. This was one that I found out because of all those different videos, so I'm really intrigued by this one. Then from New Zealand we have Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. I have heard that this book is weird. It's weird. You're not going to know what's going on. That's the whole point of it, which is something that I do enjoy in books. However, this is a sci-fi weird, and I'm only just really getting into sci-fi, so I feel like I need to read a couple things before I jump headfirst into a book that is meant to be really weird. So I've read a couple of sci-fi books like Ocean's Echo. I'm halfway through reading A Memory Called Empire, although the poetry aspect in it has made it so I've put that book down for a little while. I'm thinking that I might just bite the bullet and just read this one. I am really intrigued and I really want to read this one, so yes. That's for New Zealand. Then for Spanish, we have The Shadow of the Wind by Carles Ruiz Zafron. This is a book that I have heard nothing but good things about how it's so beautifully written. And this is set in 1945, and we're following Daniel, who goes to this library in Barcelona. He's allowed to choose one book, and then this causes a series of events to happen. I picked this up in a charity shop. Look how good the condition is for a charity shop buy. That's amazing. But yeah, so I really think I'm gonna love this one. But historical fiction is a genre that I do always like, but it takes me longer to read. I don't know why it takes me longer to read. Sometimes I can really get into it and I'm like eating it all up, but sometimes I have to read it slowly, and it's not because I don't enjoy it, it's just I find it more dense to get through. Regardless, I do want to read this one soon. I think it's going to be beautiful. A book about books sounds amazing. And then the final two books I have is actually for Australia. So we have The Book Thief by Marcus Cusack. This is a book that I was interested in reading when the film came out because I was really intrigued by the film. Never actually watched the film and never picked up the book. And so again, this is another charity shop buy, and this I believe we're following Death, and it's all set in 1939, Nazi Germany. The country is holding its breath. Death has never been busier. Again, this is meant to be a beautiful book. It is some of people's favourite books. It's definitely a book I need to read soon. Again, because it's historical fiction, I do keep putting it off. But again, I think I have high hopes. Like, I really think this is going to be such a beautiful read. And then another Australian book that I'm actually going to be reading soon is Picnic at the Hanging Rock, and this is by Joan Lindsay. This is a short little book, but I'm so excited to read it. It's actually set in summer, so I want to be reading it soon in summer. And this is following a group of young girls who decided to go for a picnic at Hanging Rock, and they never came back. And apparently Hanging Rock is actually an actual place in Australia, which is amazing. Very, very excited to read this one. But all the books that I've got on my TBR to read from around the world, so it's not actually loads, though I'd love to read more, and not just with authors that I've already read. Obviously I have more Irish books because I've got more Oscar Wilde on my shelves and things like that, but from different authors. So please put in the comments below about any book recommendations from different places around the world that you've read and loved. I really want to look into them, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed watching other people's. I found it so fascinating and interesting, and that's what made me want to do this video. You'll have to let me know, is it something that you want to try and do? I know that for me, reading around the world challenge is going to take time. I'm not going to put a time frame on this because if I do that, it's too much pressure and then I won't do it. But I just want to make a more conscious effort to try and read more, if that makes any sense at all. Anyway, thank you so very much for watching. Again, let me know any books that you would recommend reading for different countries around the world, and I'm gonna leave it there. Oh, actually, I do want to say, side note, we do have in my Discord a separate chat for books reading around the world. You've all been so lovely over there with putting in different books that you would recommend from around the world. So if you want to join in on that, again, I'll have it all linked below for you if you want to join in. But regardless, I would still love to know more in the comments, so do let me know. But okay, I'm gonna leave it here. So I think the emoji for today is going to be the world. Can't have a reading around the world challenge without a world emoji. I'm gonna stop rambling at you. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed. If you have, please give it that thumbs up, subscribe and comment. Those three things are really help this channel grow, so thank you. All my social media links, anyone I've mentioned, will be linked below, and I will of course catch you in the very next video.